The good old days. But you know what their dad did? Sunday morning, he was one of the first people to own a car, I'm sure. Board, open, remember, with the isinglass curtains and the kerosene headlamps? Who could forget that? Now the kerosene lanterns would go out and the isinglass curtains, if you got a heavy snowstorm or a rainstorm, you'd have to hurry up and there was no zippers in those days, of course. They had some sort of a buckle thing, yeah, those holes. You remember too?
I don't remember that.
Well, anyhow, see.
In 1921, and
he always loved cars. He always had to have a new car.
And then he got a Buick Touring, 7-passenger Touring. And in 1927, he got a 7-passenger Buick sedan. And he had that until approximately.
Could he have had it?
1935. It could be about that time. And then he got a small car, a Chevy at that time. Just Depression years. He downsized it to a little bit. And
I remember that 7-passenger. I thought it was a 9-passenger. We always called it.
No, it was 7-passenger with seats that folded down.
Yeah.
And
so you sat in the front and the back, and then you had seats in the middle that folded down, and you could sit on.
And I remember we went to a church meeting.
And I remember they sent a picture from the home there on Chapman Street. And you were all standing on the porch, and there was the Ford in front of it. And you sent it to Sweden, and my mom and they thought, oh, they really have it good now.
Yeah.
They have all these things.
Oh, this reminds me of one night. Well, he bought a brand new 1936 Chap. I think it was about the second week he had it. I took it to deliver some orders. And I went over, I think, was it Benton Place there behind Chautauqua. There isn't any street there now, but anyhow, cut over to Main Street, and the car backed out of a parking place, and I ran right into it. Banged up the new car. Of course, I come back to the market, and I told him. He says, those things happen, He was always the best-hearted man, and he never got too excited about anything. So then, lo and behold, about 2 nights later, I was delivering the meat, and I was going up the hill, and it was a little bit snowy and slippery, and I couldn't get up. And we got over against the curb, and the car sliding back down the hill. Well, it had a no-draft wing that wound out, and I was following the curbstone back down the hill, and didn't that window catch a tree and turned it inside out? Turned the window right around. I was just about sick, He took it in stride, and then that car was really doing, because then Henry took it out one day. He was delivering orders, and he was coming down Halleck Street, from the top of Halleck Street up where the church is now, and he met a snowplow right in the middle of the hill, and he couldn't get by, and the snowplow raked the whole side of the car. So here this car was about 4 weeks old, and it looked just, every fender was smashed up. You wouldn't believe.
I remember one time he took the choir, they went to sing down in Warren, Corey, or someplace. Anyway, they had a whole car full of choir members. And coming back home, Mom and Dad were with them.
A church meeting one Sunday afternoon, and Simon and what's his wife's name? Lily. And Mother wasn't with, but Mrs. Carlson, Agda, and Hank and I, and we had the car full, and the guy pulled out the passage, and Dad, in order to miss it, not have a head-on collision, went to the ditch, and the car flipped over and slid on the roof. And we all were upside down, you might say, and Stein was most excited.
The car flipped over and it slid right on its top. It had a cloth top. It didn't have the metal top. It's a cloth top.
Cloth top.
And that thing slid right on the top for about 100 yards down the highway.
Who you hunting, man?
Not a single soul got hurt. Not a single soul. I mean, they just, you know, they're all bruised up a little
And
bit.
they just
They rolled the car
gas
over,
tank.
rolled the car over, drove it
Well, the
home.
car case tank and the gasoline was running all over the place.
Never caught
and
fire.
Never caught fire, and nobody was hurt. And CS, he was in the front seat, and he felt this warm stuff running on his hands, and he thought somebody was bleeding bad.
I know Mom and Dad were in the car, and us kids were home with.
Your dad stuck his seat out the back window. He cut his seat.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
got a cut in the hind end, but that wasn't bad. That was
No,
just
that
enough
wasn't
to
bad.
cut
And
his
CS, he hurt himself because he kicked the windshield out so he could get out.
My God.
He loved cars.
Well, doesn't everyone?
Yeah, I know. And he always liked to go on trips, and I remember every year we had to go to Niagara Falls. So, right?
Right.
Always, that was his favorite place to go to Niagara Falls every year. And, of course, picnics. We always had to go on picnics and then I remember now, this is later on, but he always, Sunday afternoons, he would take a nap, we'd go to church, and then if we had company, we always had company for dinner on Sunday too.
Yeah.
Because then Mother never knew who she was going to have home for dinner, because if there was a visiting missionary or a visiting, we could go for a ride around the lake or
Or to Warren, and there seemed to be one place to stop at a soda fountain.
Oh yeah.
And Dad would always order Moxie.
Oh.
Some people recognize that drink,
Yeah.
old Moxie, M-O-X-I-E.
He liked to drive a car, you know.
Tell me a story.
Did I tell you a story about, well, one Sunday morning, we had to be ready by 4 o'clock in the morning in Faulkner for Uncle Carl to come down and pick my mother and Dad and I up in this Ford with isinglass curtains. It was cold that morning, and it was in the spring of the year. We went to Fort Niagara to visit, well, he would be my double cousin, Henry Carlson. And we felt so sorry for him. We asked his commanding officer when it was time for supper, because all they gave him was a hunk of rye bread with a piece of beef left over from Sunday dinner. That's all the boys were getting that night for supper, and water. So we took him into Niagara Falls and found a restaurant and gave him a good meal and brought him back again. Well, then by that time it was pitch dark. Those days you didn't have the road signs that you have nowadays. And the kerosene lamps gave out on us, and the road felt terribly bumpy, as Uncle Carl. Probably we better get out and see what's wrong with the road. We were on railroad tracks. And by that time, it was after midnight. And imagine, none of us drove except CS. And Dad got out and helped him turn the car around and relight these kerosene lamps. And get back on a dirt road. And we didn't know whether we were going north, east, south, or west.
His common response was, they can see me.
Yeah, right. They gotta look out for me, you know. I don't have to. So boy, we'd pass a car, and Ethel and I'd sit in the back, and we'd pass a car, and just as he got his nose ahead of the other car, he'd turn in, and the other car would sail off into a ditch or somewhere to avoid getting getting hit.
It was remarkable that they didn't have the accident.
I know it. I can't believe it. But they gotta look out for me. As long as he got just a little bit ahead of the car, in he'd turn and they'd swerve off the roads and Ethel go, phew!
Well, actually, I don't think they had any instructions, you know.
Oh, no.